Welcome to We're Gonna Run It with Joe Lisi and Terry Bowden.
You're listening to We're Gonna Run It.
What's your game plan?
Can they run, but will they run? If you want to run the ball, you got to give it to a guy that's a running back.
Gutless. We're gonna run it.
We're gonna play blue collar. Enjoy it. I said it. Have a little heart and have some stones.
We're gonna run it.
If you want to throw an RPO, you got to run first, pass second. That's why it's not called a PRO. It's an RPO. You got to start with a running game that puts people on their heel.
Take a look at my algo. His algo was used with all data from last year. You're so smart, you're stupid.
We're gonna run it.
And the people that believe that talking head are even stupider than what I thought. I said it.
If you want to run the ball, you got to give it to a guy that's a running back.
You got no shot to get back into the series. No shot. I said it. What's your game plan?
We're gonna run it.
Oh, yeah, we are going to run it straight into week number 13 of college football. Joe Lisi and head coach Terry Bowden breaking down all things college football. Coach, Tuesday night, we have the college football playoff rankings. Last week, it was Miami in the 11th spot. I'm assuming after these rankings come out in just a couple of minutes, maybe, just maybe, fresh off their dominating performance in Tuscaloosa, maybe we'll get Oklahoma cracking the top 10 after that dominating performance. But talk to me about what transpired last Saturday in week 12, what you thought. And, you know, when you look at the SEC, we said it before, there's still not a clear-cut favorite.
No.
It looks like it's Texas A&M, but those Bulldogs are roaring right now heading into this weekend.
Yeah, and if you look at the tiebreaker situation, it's downright confusing. I mean, one team, everybody's not playing the same teams, and it's not the head-up match doesn't necessarily knock you out because you lost to a head-up team if you all didn't play a head-up team. It's a little bit confusing, but I'd say there's still about 4 teams at least that are in a hunt for the SEC championship game. So, again, the big games like we had last week nail it down a little bit more, but they also open it up for more possibilities as these teams finish up with their really an off week this week for a lot of the big teams, and then the big season finale the next week.
Well, that's where you get the pundits saying the SEC takes this week off before, obviously, the rivalry week and all those big matchups that take place in week number 14. I will say there's still 2 solid SEC matchups. Former Southwest Conference matchup of Arkansas that has just been snake bitten this year, heading into this ballgame, 2-7 overall, lost 6 straight by less than 7 points in each one of these games. They go on the road into Austin to face Arch Manning in Texas. They need a win just to keep their hopes alive. There's the argument in that if Texas wins and knocks off A&M, potentially they could be a 3-loss team in the college football playoff. We'll see how it plays out. And then the early matchup, Oklahoma looking to keep their playoff hopes alive, faces Missouri. Missouri dominates last week Mississippi State. They put up a 40 spot. Ahmad Hardy with 3 rushing touchdowns and 300 yards on the ground. There's talk that Bo Perbula, their starting quarterback for Missouri, might be available for this game. But there's going to be ring rust. There's the potential. And Perbula, even when he was in there, didn't step up. He had that one solid performance. You could say he was, within striking distance of Alabama and Vanderbilt, but didn't pull those games out. And going on the road to Norman is no easy feat.
Yeah, but Missouri, that one thing about them, they always seem to want to have a complimentary quarterback. They're going to run the football, play defense, a guy that can manage the offense, get the ball to the right guy. But I don't think we saw even Cook a couple of years ago, the stud NFL guy. They're always a great coach, great staff, a great scheme and system. But I think your quarterback there, more importantly, needs to be a manager of the team. But I'm with you. Perbula, he really just went out there and did his job. And really that's what they needed. When you get a freshman sometimes, he's so limited on the game plan. As I look at teams this late in the season, and you know me, when I see a quarterback go down and I'm now looking at a second teamer or a third teamer, I think back of all the games I had to call plays, and I had a guy that couldn't run all the plays. He couldn't execute the plays. then I begin to say, okay, how much can we do with this guy? Now, your average person on the street doesn't see all that, but I noticed that first thing I'm going to go look for is when they get to a quarterback, is that a backup quarterback? How many reps was he getting during the season? And what can they run when he's in there?
Yeah, exactly. And again, you think of tempo with Missouri in this matchup. They want to push a little bit of tempo, similar to what Ole Miss did.
Right.
Tennessee tried to do that as well. That's the way you potentially beat Oklahoma, is utilizing tempo, run the football, working off of play action. Again, easier said than done,
Right.
because this was an Oklahoma defense that entered that matchup last week, holding opposing offenses to basically 2.5 yards per carry. And they got and forced Ty Simpson into long third downs in that matchup, and were able to win the turnover battle, and that's why they were able to pull out that win. Again, it's not an easy feat. Missouri's spunky, not easy, but you still give the edge to Oklahoma. And then the last regular season game, you don't know what you're going to get out of LSU. They went toe-to-toe with Arkansas. They pulled the game out. It's an interim staff. Van Buren has been there, but that's a game Oklahoma should win, even though they got dominated last year.
Yeah, and I think when you get to the SEC, the level like LSU, although the season didn't go right, they have football players. They've got talent on their team. When you look at a Florida, when you look at a LSU, maybe offensively for an Arkansas, South Carolina, you still see teams that had high expectations that didn't come through, but the talent level is there. And on even any given Saturday, you got to be real careful, because if you don't play your best, they can come get you. But these games are very important. The teams that are supposed to win or need to win, they know how big they are, and you're probably going to get the best of these teams right now. There's nobody waiting for the week after any point more now, because it's almost single elimination when it comes to getting into the conference championship or getting into the playoff. There's no tomorrow beyond Saturday.
And A&M found that out the hard way, right? You blink, they were down 30-3, heading into basically the middle of the third quarter. They were an 18.5-point home favorite. This was a team in South Carolina that beat them down last year in Williams-Brice. They were a 2.5-point underdog. They won that game 44-20. That was a big day for Lenora Sellers, the rushing attack of South Carolina. Well, early on, you saw that South Carolina was dialed in. Lenora Sellers hit some big plays over the top. Defensively, they got after Marcel Reed. They had the scoop and score that really changed the momentum early on, made South Carolina believe that they can win that game. But I will give credit to Mike Elko and A&M. A majority of teams, including Alabama and some of the big boys, would have folded the cards and basically not giving it a shot. They come storming back, 27 points, biggest comeback in A&M history, and that was a dominant fourth quarter. That they got it done. They remain unbeaten, and now they're a shoo-in basically for the college football playoff.
That's right, and I will say that game right there, as well as the game Oklahoma against Alabama, shows you how important, and maybe the most important statistic that you can look at is turnover margin. Turnovers. When you get to late in the season, and both teams are very good, both teams are playing as best they can, turnovers become big factors in the outcome of a game. A turnover, as you know, can mean 3 points, it can mean 7 points, and that could be that could cover the spread right there. And it changes everything when this outcome is usually going to be a single score game anyway. And so I'm always looking for which team doesn't turn the ball over. But I think you got to be careful, because there are coaching that can really coach to prevent fumbles by doing a better job of securing the football. Teams that pursue the football better or more likely to get a scoop and score or to recover a fumble. But quite often, it's just a matter of that ball is oblong, it's not round, it bounces funny. Deflection by a quarterback, by the defensive lineman, goes to somebody else's hand. But turnovers play such a big factor, and that's kind of the way it was in the first half for Texas A&M, and that's the way it was for Alabama against Oklahoma.
Here's the thing, and I've said it from basically the start of the season. The one team I would only bet on to win a national championship, and I don't care who's the front runner now, Ohio State and some of the others, Indiana, and obviously A&M. My money's on Georgia.
Yeah.
And I know it was a down year by Georgia standards. Carson Beck gets hurt last year. They lose to Notre Dame in the semifinal, got pushed around, untypical of a Georgia team. Well, this team now looks like the national champion back-to-back that we saw just a few seasons ago. They're playing with physicality. They're running the football more effectively. They're winning on third down. Gunnar Stockton doesn't look like a freshman or an inexperienced quarterback anymore. He looks like a veteran that has been there, done that. And all they do now, every time in a marquee matchup since they lost to Alabama, is they step up and they find ways to win, and they win different ways. This team has an identity now, and I'm telling you, they're going to make a deep run at the college football playoff.
Yeah, you know something? I think you've got championship teams, but when I look at Georgia, they've got a championship coach. He knows how to prepare a team to play for championship football. I think he resembles or emulates Nick Saban more than anybody coming off of his staff. There's other guys that are very successful that worked with Nick, but he seems to be like Nick and builds his football team like Nick Saban. And I think that's what he understands about being successful. And I think that's very important. I mean, I was an offensive coach, but I knew I couldn't win championships if I didn't have a great defensive coordinator and I didn't have some people that could run the football. I was going to be in trouble late in the season. And I think that's the one thing that, adding on to everything else about Georgia, they may not rush the passer as well. They may not even run as much yardage as they do in their great teams, but they resemble those teams and their philosophy of football, how they approach the game, how they make adjustments on the field, how they wear you down to the fourth quarter. All those things come into play, and that's how they win. And that's why I think they become even better toward the end of the season.
We'll see exactly how they perform. They are 44.5-point home favorites over Charlotte.
Yeah.
They have struggled to cover these big spreads, but all it is, get out of Dodge with a W and worry about that matchup against Georgia Tech in Atlanta. This Georgia Tech team is laying 2.5 against Pittsburgh. Georgia Tech steps up. They get pushed to the limit by BC. They win it in the last second to keep their ACC championship hopes alive. You look at the flip side, Pittsburgh with an out-of-conference game. Pat Narduzzi talked about getting blown out. It doesn't matter. Well, they got blown out. All right, they snapped their 5-game losing streak. Notre Dame did and had their way with Pittsburgh offensively and defensively. But they still have everything in front of them, Pittsburgh. This is a game, Georgia Tech and Pitt, that will ultimately, catapult one of those teams into the front slot for the ACC title game. Early thoughts about both teams from what you saw last Saturday.
With Pitt, Pitt's biggest problem is they can't. Again, I'm gonna go back to turnovers. I mean, Mason Henschel has had a little bit of a problem with his turnovers. It's usually about one a game, but he turned the ball over. There was a pick six with that team. Notre Dame went up 14-0 to begin with, and you don't play catch up with that football team, but they do have an outstanding quarterback. And Pittsburgh is a very good team, and they are the kind of team. Now, they've got to finish up strong. They've got some tough teams to finish up with, but they have a chance to come back and finish very strong because they have a good quarterback. But this is going to be a great football game with Pitt and Georgia Tech because I think their quarterbacks are top-notch. But I tend to like, which team runs the ball better? Which team has a quarterback that's a veteran? It's kind of like Diego Pavia. You put the ball in Haynes King's hand in the last 4 minutes of the football game. He'll either hold on to the ball and make sure he gets one more first down, or he'll move it down the field to get one more score. The only thing about Georgia Tech that I worry about, they don't play great defense. They give up too many points, and every game is a dogfight. And Pitt can score points. They can put points on the board when they're not turning the ball over.
I agree. And again, when you look at Pittsburgh, the way you beat Pittsburgh is over the top. They're very good in run support, which goes right into the strength of Georgia Tech. And I still feel this game potentially could be won in the trenches. We talk about the quarterbacks. We talk about Haynes King and his versatility.
Right.
Pittsburgh's that blue-collar team. Now, they got pushed around by a bigger, more physical team in Notre Dame, but I think they match up better against Georgia Tech, and I think that's the matchup. Again, can Georgia Tech get up there to 200, 2.25, running the football against Pittsburgh? I'm not so sure, Coach, and that's why I give the inside edge defensively to the Panthers over Georgia Tech, even though Tech's at home.
And Pitt's kind of had their number. Pitt's won 4 out of 5 against Georgia Tech over the last 5 years. Narduzzi's done a great job against Georgia Tech, and so Pitt won't feel like they're playing against a team that has an advantage over them. I think they're going to go in there, the players that have been there a year or two, confident of what they can do against Georgia Tech. But that should be a good game. It's almost a toss-up game, 2.5 points right now. But it's going to be one of those games where, who do you think? I look how close the quarterback situation is, and I kind of I got Haynes King, you know me. I'll go one more series. If they need a field goal to win that game, I think Haynes King will get one more first down. And if they're going to get 200 yards rushing, half of it's going to come from Haynes King. And he grinds it sometimes. He doesn't turn his head. He goes between the tackles on the power read. He finds a way to help that team make yards, and he doesn't slide toe first a lot either.
No, he doesn't. And again, he's going to make plays. If you can limit Haynes King to potentially 50 or 60 yards the ground, you're going to have a shot to win that game, and we'll see exactly if Pitt could do that. Again, if you're Pitt, you want to be able to run the football, take the pressure. You're on the road. Yep. I know it's not one of these marquee environments, Bobby Dodd, but it's still an environment where, Georgia Tech and that crowd gets loud. You're going to struggle. We saw some teams go in there. Virginia Tech, I know they're not good, and Syracuse as well. Even Clemson early on in that year, they got pushed to the limit. That was the one loss on the road that Clemson really struggled. They have 5 losses on the road. 4 came at home. That was the one on the road for the Tigers. So that we'll see exactly what happens. We'll break that game down in the picks on Thursday night, Coach and I. SEC we covered. I do want to just talk Arkansas snake bitten, Coach. When you just look at this team, we haven't heard a lot about this Arkansas job as of late. It's been the rumor mill of Lane Kiffin and following Kiffin all over. His family's in Baton Rouge. Kim Mulkey comes out and says he's in Gainesville, the LSU women's basketball coach. You don't know what to believe. But what if a coach like Eddie O were to go to Arkansas? Any upgrade, or is it similar to what Sam Pittman brings to the table in Fayetteville?
Well, no, no, there is no coach quite like Eddie O. There's no coach quite like him. Emotional. He's obviously a Cajun. He's Cajun by heritage, and so he fit in naturally at LSU. But he does, as long as he surrounds himself with a great staff. That's what he did at LSU. Surround himself with great, because he can recruit. He can bring recruits in. But remember, recruiting is not so much about sitting in the living room and dazzling that ma and pa. It's about money in the pocket and going in there and giving a good in-out package. And you almost need a guy that's a numbers guy that plays that game a little bit. But I'm not. I'm not as big on recycling coaches and trying to get the same thing coming back. I still believe the coach at Memphis, the coach at Tulane, the coach at USF, the outstanding group of 5 coaches are on the verge of being the next great one, or an assistant somewhere. And if you look back over time, there'll be as many, if not more, successful coaches in the SEC and ACC that were not head coaches. They were assistants. You can go from Kirby Smart right on through the list of coaches that are coaching that were not head coaches, that were assistants, that have found their mark and finally got their opportunity, and they're going to do a good job. So I think the people making the selection just need to be smart. And if you're going to recycle, we feel like that's kind of what Virginia Tech is doing, although I think probably James Franklin was about as good a pick as they could get in getting a successful Power 4 head coach to stay in the business, because he really has never lost wherever he's been anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, there's rumors about Eddie O.
Yeah.
There's rumors about Summerall. There's rumors about Silverfield.
Uh-huh.
We don't know what to believe. All I can tell you is, this team could very easily be at least 500 by
Right.
picking out some of those wins. They have offensive talent. Omega Blake, the transfer from Charlotte, Mike Washington, and Taylon Green. Now, I don't believe Washington or Taylon Green will be there, but there is, talent there. Can you keep it? And that is the biggest concern for Arkansas. I brought up Petrino. Offensively is not the problem. The problem has been the defense. The problem has been being able to stop better teams. And,
Right.
When the game is on the line, they haven't been able to do that or close it out. So, again, we'll see what transpires. I do feel they pose a problem if they are on, and you know that you think they're a dead football team, but all they do is cover numbers, coach, and it's back-to-back road games. But knowing that this is more of an Southwest Conference rivalry back in the day,
Right.
they're going to probably bring their A game against Texas. And if Texas isn't up to the task, or they're still thinking about the game against Georgia, they could get knocked off.
Well, here's why I think Texas has got to be careful, because I guarantee it, Steve Sarkisian, all he's heard after that game against Georgia, and all he's going to hear the rest of the week is, you can't run the ball. You can't run the ball. You don't run the ball enough. You better run it. And now he plays a team that's 113th against the run, and he's going to want to run the football. He's even made in his post-game press conference saying, my object was to throw the ball against Georgia, but I need to run it against Arkansas. Well, the problem is they're not a great running team. And if he goes away from what they do well, when they score a lot of points, it's usually pass first, 1 second. And I'm saying they got to win this game no matter what. And I'm saying even though the statistics of Arkansas say you need to run the football, and they need to add that in, they got to be real careful not to go away from what they're good at or what they're going to do. They're going to end up playing they say, okay, we should run it. Well, even if you're not very good at it, all you did is guaranteed a real close football game, one that's pretty tight, one that you can't outscore people, because when Texas outscores people, Arch Manning throws for about 350 yards and about 4 touchdowns. And so it'll be interesting because, one, Texas doesn't need to run the football. And statistics show against Arkansas they should run the football. But you better do what you do best when there's a game you got to win. And right now, at the last of a season, Texas can't change what they do well. And what they do well is throw the ball a little bit better than they run the football.
Exactly. And again, they don't have an identity. Even if they knock off A&M, which I don't think they're going to be able to do. Again, they would have to get a similar type of game with A&M where they won it last year, 17-7. A&M's offense is much improved with Marcel Reed in year number 2. And again, Arch Manning still coach, does not look comfortable. I don't know what it is, but again, that offense just doesn't look like it's in a rhythm. I don't think their wide receiver core is as strong as it was last year. And I know it was just Golden and Helm, Matt Golden at the wideout, and they had Isaiah Bond that just, was a speedster, insignificant in big games, but It was the tight end. Now it's like Ryan Wingo and everybody else. It's just, they are just a one-trick pony. And again, look at the body of work. You struggle with Kentucky. Now, Kentucky's won some games as of late. Yeah. You struggle with Miss State. Okay, great. You lose to Florida on the road. I mean, think about big picture. They have to go, if they make the college football playoff, most likely they're going to be in a road environment. They're not going anywhere the way they have played in tough environments in the conference this season.
Yeah, and I think Alabama, I felt the same way all along about Alabama because they were not a strong running, and they're a better running team at Alabama than they are at Texas. But I felt like they weren't quite strong enough to really work good through the playoffs if they get into the playoffs. But when I see the teams that run the ball consistently well as play great defense, the other day when I watched Oregon play and they ran the crap out of that football, I forget who it was. That was last week, not this past week, and they couldn't even be slowed down. The stock goes up in postseason to me when they can run the football like that. And so I don't think you fare well in the playoffs with 3 games in postseason if you're not a team that can run that football.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we'll see how that game plays out. It's a 3:30 kick in Austin. We'll see if Arkansas brings it in that matchup. Miami and Virginia Tech. Are you expecting Miami to roll in Virginia Tech? This was the game last year, Coach, where they had the Hail Mary and 50-50. The way Miami's playing, it looks like they should blow them out. But again, it's going to be colder than what Miami's used to. Early kick in Virginia Tech. I know they're dead and buried, but, that offense still could put up some points. Should they just steamroll Va-Tech in this matchup?
Well, they should steamroll. When I say steamroll, there's 17.5. I don't care if it's 38 to 50 to 20. That's 17.5. I'd say they can beat them by 17 points or 21 points. Whether it's 50 to 50, Indiana steamroll is different than a Miami steamroll. Miami doesn't necessarily steamroll, but I do feel like they'll play. They've got to play well. They're in a series that they have to show themselves well, because they're not talking about making the ACC championship game. They're talking about making that top 12, and a lot of that's going to be how they win as well. We can say margin of victory is not important, but heck if it isn't. If you look good and you play well, it means a lot better. They played well last week, won a big game, 42-7. I do think they'll play well. I don't think Virginia Tech has got a lot left in them. Early on, after the coaching change, I felt they played good at times. I don't feel like that. Florida State ripped them pretty good and won handily against Virginia Tech last week. And so I really think that I think it was last week, or was it last week they played Virginia Tech? And beat them 34-14. And so I'm not sure. I think Miami has got a little different football team than last year. Still disappoint me with some of the decisions the coaching staff makes. I think the quarterback at times doesn't play like the veteran star player that he is, the NFL player that he wants to be projected as. I'm not so sure I see good, smart decisions by him all the time, but I do think they'll come back and win this one handily. And if they aren't, then if they're not wide awake for this game, if they're not on top of their game, then they're not the team. They're not the team that we think they are, because it's all on the line here. They're one and done.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're 15th in the nation. We'll see what happens with the rankings. Barring what happens in the pick game, everything, they have to win out. Right. That's it. And I honestly, I don't think it's just win. I think it's take care of business and dominate. Leave no margin for this is like the old BCS days,
right?
Where you have to keep in mind 10-2 Miami, 10-2 Oklahoma, 10-2 Notre Dame. Now they beat Notre Dame in the head-to-head, but the way Oklahoma's playing, if you're asking me, and we have to figure it out. But if it comes down to a 10-2 Miami team and a 10-2 Oklahoma hands down over Miami, Coach.
No, the way people are playing now, I think that's what the committee is looking at too. Which team is progressing, and how can we put the best 12 people in the playoff? Right or wrong, we remember a few years back when Florida State lost their quarterback and they were undefeated, and they did not get put in the playoffs. Because people they didn't think they had a chance to win, and they didn't. They didn't have a chance based on losing that quarterback that they had. But I think right now Oklahoma is playing that way. Miami, and I think you said exactly what I said. They need to dominate. If they are a conference championship team, it's a football conference playoff team. They need to dominate against a Virginia Tech team that's hiring a new coach. That the players they're getting contacted. They're getting looked at by other people. The later you get into the season, the more likely it is that the players are distracted at this point, and the coaches. So, again, Miami has everything to play for. They've got no tomorrow. They've got to play. They've got to play well. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to pick them, I believe, to carry that spread because they have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we've seen this Miami team in similar situations throughout the years, most notably with Mark Richt. They go on the road to Pittsburgh week number 12 after Thanksgiving that year, and they lost to Kenny Pickett who was a freshman in Pittsburgh. You know, we saw them last year, Syracuse and Georgia Tech down the stretch. No good. You know, all they had to do was basically win one of both of those games, 1 or 2, and they dropped them both. So again, we'll see how they come out. They did come out flat against SMU. We'll see if they come out flat against a team that pushed them to the limit. Now, last year they were 14.5-point dogs in South Beach. Now they're 17.5 in that matchup.
Joe, let me say this, though. You mentioned it earlier to me today. If they were to get colder weather, I don't know what Virginia's not quite as cold as Pittsburgh. I've coached in Blacksburg and I've coached in Pittsburgh. But say they get a cold day there, I think that could have a little effect on Miami's got to be careful that those guys don't that they respond well to that cold weather, because that can be different. I don't know at this point at this time of year if it's quite cold enough in Virginia as it would be in even Pittsburgh. I know I was in I grew up in Morgantown and played football at West Virginia. You're talking about late November. It can start getting pretty cold on those games.
Well, Saturday, it's going to be balmy, 62. But there's rain in the forecast.
Right. Well, that can change things too.
There you go. So all of a sudden now you got precipitation on the horizon. Humidity will be 75% as of now, Tuesday night, precipitation for Blacksburg. So keep in mind, obviously the 17.5 to me still looks appealing.
Yep.
With, I just like Virginia Tech. I'm not sold on Miami big picture. I want to see exactly how they come out in this game. I have watched them back-to-back weeks against Cuse and last week against NC State. Didn't really dive in as much as I did some other dogs, but this is a game where I'm willing to pull the trigger potentially on Virginia Tech. Another one, Coach, what were you impressed last week in the games that played out? And we talked about Notre Dame, but were you impressed with Oregon's performance when you watched them against Minnesota? Remember that Friday night game?
I could not believe how much they just ran at will against Minnesota. I coached against PJ Fleck when he was at Western Michigan. Pretty physical coach. He liked to have a physical football team. And it wasn't close. Their backs had a field day. And they were not even slowed down. And I was amazed at how much better they were athletically. And you think of Oregon, and I don't probably watch enough of the West Coast teams in my past, but you still think of that as being a fly, throw the ball around, wide open. Oregon can flat run the football in their quarterback, and they can throw it too. But they add that great. The defense very good. And this game's in Austin, I believe, this week at Oregon again. That's a heck.
USC.
Yeah, that's going to be a heck of a game. That's a heck of a field to play in. If you watch that game on TV, those fans are just yards away from the field. They're 5 yards away from the sideline, all the way around it. And I've been in there. It is a tough place to go into play. Although that stadium doesn't have the numbers that the big SEC schools, it's as loud and as crazy as any place I've ever been. And but anyway, I was very impressed with Oregon. And because the week before that, it was Iowa that they beat 18-16. I didn't think they showed as much. But again, that was Iowa playing in cold, rainy, windy weather in Iowa. But when I saw Oregon play the way they did, I'm very impressed with Oregon. And I'm very impressed with Oregon as a postseason team. I think they could be in the contention to move it up the ladder and into those later playoff games.
We'll see. Again, they were undefeated last year, number one team in the country. They go and face off against Ryan Day in Ohio State, and they got smacked around. Right. I think they learned from that. Again, are they as flamboyant or explosive as they were last year? No, I think they're more methodical.
Yeah.
But again, I think their defense is a little bit more physical this year than it was last year. Again, styles make fights. Minnesota didn't really pose a problem over the top. USC in that passing attack is going to challenge them.
Right.
Again, this is a coach in Lincoln Riley. You and I had talked about it. All right, great. 8 wins. Can you get to 10? Because they have playoff hopes alive. Right. They're going into Eugene, not an easy environment. And again, this is a game. I'm just just talking big picture, Lincoln Riley, for all the money, and we talk about Sarkisian, and we talk about Kiffin, and we talk about, Lanning and all these coaches that are making 10 and 11 million bucks.
Yeah.
For Lincoln Riley to just basically go 7-6 and 8-4, and I mean, at what point, Coach? I mean, right? I mean, at some point, the rubber has to meet the road, and you have to cross the threshold of at least challenging for a college football playoff. This is a game where you live up to your paycheck.
Yeah, and I think what Lincoln Riley has not proven that he can do is go out there and build his football program around a top defense. We're going to build our program to have a defensive mentality. That's not part of his background. That's not part of his DNA, and it's not to his advantage. I think that's where the problem is, because when you go out there and all you're interested in doing is scoring a lot of points, you don't play close games very well. You don't play to your defense. When there is any kind of elements, sometimes a quarterback's like a pitcher. Sometimes they ain't throwing strikes, and defense is always there. Defense is if you're good on defense, you're likely going to be good every week in and week out, because that's a mentality where their offense. And so I think Lincoln Riley he has there's just a bit of finesse in that background that I don't think USC. I mean, that's an old tailback, power eye formation, strong, physical, athletic football program that has won a lot of football games. And you and I, we go way back on that now to a lot of great teams with a lot of players that can run the football at Southern Cal. So I mean, I like Oregon in this football game now. They're not just because they're playing Oregon, just because the way Oregon plays, the way Dan Lanning coaches, and the way they play defense and run the football. I just think it goes in their favor. Although I think USC can score points and they're explosive, I think at the end of the day, I'm going to stick with that Oregon against USC.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, we'll be breaking these games down on Thursday in deeper detail, just really previewing some of the matchups. Indiana and Ohio State are on a collision course for that Big Ten championship. Penn State and Nebraska this week. I mean, I am a little shocked, though. Penn State picked up the victory over Michigan State to lay 9.5, and I understand Nebraska on a backup quarterback, but that is a fishy line when you just think about Penn State, where they are, interim staff, Nebraska and Matt Rule 7-3. You would think that Rule would want to go into Penn State and at least prove a point with a backup quarterback, so we'll see how that plays out. Utah's got a tough game this weekend. Not tough. They have to win to keep their hopes alive against Kansas State. What's a job, and they're right. We haven't heard much out of Oklahoma State's coaching search. With Gundy, that it was there for so long. Where do they go in just coaching?
You know what? I think if we knew what their aspirations are, as far as money together, commitment to the NIL, commitment to the coaching staff salaries, and all those things, that's what it's going to take. And if you remember, that's kind of what Mike Gundy said they weren't doing anymore. They weren't putting the money where they should have put. Now, other people said, well, he just wasn't into NILs. But I think pretty much he felt like they weren't putting the money in. Because remember, he said, we don't do anything that Oregon does. We don't have any of the players and the money that they do. And there was a time when T. Boone Pickens kind of made Oklahoma State what it was. And Barry Sanders, because you're going back 30, 40 years. But they got all the great players now. And I don't want to say they bought players, but the rumors were back then they bought players. But I'll be honest with you, if you didn't, you wouldn't be able to beat Barry Switzer in Oklahoma very well because they had great players as well. But the problem is with NIL, now you got to put up big money. You got to put up the money if you're going to be competing. But you're right. We haven't heard a thing about Oklahoma State. But I think, like I say, sometimes it's smart to keep it very quiet. On the other hand, it's such a bad situation. I don't think guys want their name thrown in that hat yet if they're big name coaches, because that has the perception of not being as elite a job as they would want it to be. Like I say, unless things are being discussed behind closed doors, there's no reason they can't make that commitment.
We'll see. Does he get another job, Gundy?
I mean, he's been there. He's an Oklahoma State guy. He played there. He coached there longer than anybody. I see him retiring. I just don't see a guy he has been such a part of Oklahoma State so long. And that's a big change for a guy like that. He hasn't been a lot of different places coaching. The one thing I did in coaching, I kept moving up from one job to the next, and so had to get used to different parts of the country, moving and not being so locked into one city or one town, because you can fall in love with where you live and not want to make that move. But I think he's probably, I mean, how old is he? I don't even know. Is he late 50s?
Yeah, early 50s.
He's not necessarily through, but this hasn't been a good finish for him. And it's kind of like, does he want to go coach at a lower level or coach a group of 5 school? Because I don't know that you can get – it's so bad this year, I don't know if you can jump into a Power 4 job.
I feel like because he understands the landscape, Arkansas wouldn't be a bad job for him, would it?
No, it wouldn't, but they would not. They're not going. They would make their fans furious, I think, if they were to go out there and hire a guy that was. I mean, they're 1-10 right now, or they haven't won a conference game, I don't think, this season. And no, I don't. He'd have to sit. I think for him, if he wants to go coach again, probably need to sit a year, or go be an analyst somewhere. That seems to work for everybody. If you have a tough situation, go be an analyst somewhere, and get your name hot again.
Yeah, we'll see exactly how it plays out for Gundy. And Oklahoma State does have. Yeah, they are winless, so they are now. What are they? 0-9. They're 0-16 the last 2 years.
Yeah, the comp. 12. Yeah.
That's terrible.
Not good situation.
Not good. Arizona with an upset win over Satterfield and Cincinnati last weekend. They're laying 6.5 to Baylor. I just want to see what other games of note. Obviously, Cincinnati and BYU. What do you think about this? Just if BYU were to make the college football playoff, good or bad for college football?
Golly, I don't know if I'm trying to pull out the 12 teams. When you start the process of elimination, where do they fit in? If you got 4 or 5 SEC or 3, if you got the Big 10, you got a ACC, a Big 12, you got to have Notre Dame, you got to have a group of 5, whether it be James Madison and all of a sudden you don't have anything left. A lot of these teams get left out. And can the Big 10, can the Big 12 get 2 teams or 3 teams in? I
don't know. That's the discussion, because the SEC looks like a shoe-in now for potentially 5, right?
Yeah, I've got the SEC possibly 5, Big 10 3, ACC 1, Big 12 1, Independent, Notre Dame 1, and G5 1. That's 12 teams. And if you go down to 4 in the SEC, you might add a Miami or a Michigan or an extra team. I'm counting Oregon as one of those 3 teams in the Big 10, but there's not a whole lot of availability of space for 12 teams.
So let me give you a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Right? Slot number 12. You ready?
Yeah, I got it.
10-2 Miami with a victory over Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
10-2 Oklahoma, right, with a victory over Bama and Michigan. 10-2 Michigan with a win over Ohio State, and we'll throw BYU in there. 10-2 overall. Which one you picking?
We'll be with you last of those those names you threw out there, probably just because of perception, voting possibility. BYU. What are they right now? They're number 11 right now. The second team. They're still up there pretty good. They're at 9 wins. They're still up there pretty good. But you've got to throw people up there.
It's up to you. Who are you taking?
Give me those. Give me those teams again. I'll tell you.
Miami, 10-2. Oklahoma, 10-2. Michigan, 10-2, and BYU, 10-2.
Oklahoma, I would take. But now let me say, if Michigan were to knock off Ohio State, they got to knock off Ohio State to get that 10-2?
So yeah, they do.
Okay, they do that. They may be as hot as firecrackers. I'm telling you again.
But then what you have the problem is you have Oklahoma that has the head-to-head over Michigan. Let's not.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, there's a lot of thought going into this process. I'm gonna tell you. That's why I say my first thought it would be Oklahoma if they could have a big win over. Well, that's LSU. They've already got some big wins. They've already got 4 out of 5.
They just have to win
ranked
out.
Teams. They now just got to beat Missouri and LSU to get out. Well, like I say, I like the way they're playing. I think they are trending upward, and I like the way they're finishing up. And if I think if they finish up 10-2, I think they would be that.
And they got both games at home.
So they are. And I think they would be that 5th team in the SEC to make it.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt as long as they take care of business against Missouri and LSU, they are a shoo-in for the college football playoff. And again, 2 weeks ago, they were, I think, 40-1 to win a national championship because nobody gave them a shot against Alabama. Right. Even though they were 5.5, 6-point underdogs, the perception was that Bama is still one of the best teams in the country. And again, every team has flaws, Coach.
Right.
Every single team. You can make the argument Ohio State to this point, doesn't have a flaw, and that's fine. But again, when you look at Alabama and you look at, all the top teams, A&M, they could be knocked off on any given Saturday, and there's no guarantees. If Ohio State knocks off Indiana, against an SEC caliber team, there could be mismatch problems. And I know they didn't get challenged by Tennessee last year, but styles make fights, And again, I think this year is as wide open as we've seen over the last 5 or 6 seasons.
That's why when I'm looking at the preseason and I'm saying, okay, which teams are going to be there at the end? And I'm saying, okay, how many guys do they have on their team that are going to be drafted? How many NFL caliber athletes? Because when it gets to postseason play, it's going to be it gets back to who's got the best football players and who's got the most big time players. Because it's depth, it's backups, it's a number of guys that can change the outcome of a game. And so I think it really gets down to any year in and year out. You can almost pick 4 or 5 that always have those kind of athletes. There's Ohio State's going to have them, Georgia's going to have them, Alabama's going to have them. Then you can throw some other teams in there, and unless the coaches screw it up, they're going to be able to contend. And if they can get their schedule and make their wins, they're going to have the kind of teams that can win in the postseason with the talent that they have. And right now, it's kind of the way it is right now with the top 5 and 6 the way they are playing. The way they've got them listed, I was looking at my AP top 25. I don't have the college football playoff top 25. That come out tonight.
Yeah, it's on its way. I'm trying to find it right now.
But I've got the AP top 25, which won't be too much different. But the best teams are the ones that are up there. They still have the best talent. Because Texas Tech, I mean, that's a great example of a team that through the NIL, they have taken a team that maybe was always thought of as an offensive team and loaded up with one of the best defensive front sevens anybody's got in the country right now. And they can probably play with anybody.
They opened up a can of whoop ass on Central Florida. Let me tell you, that game was over before it started.
Yeah.
Central Florida was fighting for bowl contention. They have to win, 2 of their last 3. Well, now they got to win out just to get there. So here we go. Let me see if it's any. They didn't change it up, or is this? I'm looking at the top 25, top 10
college football playoff.
Yeah, 25. But I don't know if this is the updated one or last week right now. I think it's last week, but I could be wrong. They have Tulane in there, Tech, Notre Dame, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's in at 8. Ole Miss, Miami. You have Miami at 11, Ole Miss at 6, Bama at 10. Oregon at 7. Still have Bama in there. The 4 buys. Georgia, Ohio State, A&M, and Indiana. So.
And that's this week's. That'll be the way they're projecting right now. Then there's still too much football to be played, but I don't think that's still the teams that we assumed would have the talent to be up there are the ones that are still up there. The surprise teams are Ole Miss probably is a little bit of a surprise team for what people thought at the beginning of the season. But they've come – I think that's probably why Lane Kiffin is so highly regarded is that he's got them back up there when it was Last year he was loaded and lost a ton of players to the NFL, and he's reloaded and done it again very well.
Yeah, we will see. Again, the situation surrounding Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, one of his players too, Coach, came out today and had said that, somebody retweeted on X that, he's ruining it for his players. And Kewan Lacey came out and reposted it. And he thought, now he did have Kewan Lacey in his office today when he was on the McAfee show. You think Lane's allowing this to affect the team, knowing what's ahead of them and knowing that the Egg Bowl is on the horizon?
No, I don't. I think he wants to win that Egg Bowl. He doesn't want to ruin this season and ruin the year, because they would blame it on him if he lost the Egg Bowl the way his team has played all year and the way this thing is dragged on, whether right or wrong. He would get a lot of blame for that, especially if he left after that. I don't think he wants that to be the case, but also I think Lane's going to do what's best for Lane, and I think he's been that way. But I don't, because you remember early in his career when he jumped from one place to another, and didn't pay a whole lot of attention to what they thought about it. And I don't think Lane worries too much. And I do think he likes to play the game. He likes to be the guy everybody in America wants to hear him talk, and he likes to do press conferences. And he's pretty smart. I just think he's a pretty dang good coach. But I do say this: as long as he would word it right and say the right things, I don't think he has to make his mind up right now just to be good to the players. I would just say, men, we're not going to talk about that junk. I'm focused on this season. One day you may jump in the portal one day. Let's focus on winning right now, and nothing else, and go from there. And I think he could get those players to buy into that, and then just make the decision as soon as the regular season's over, get it done and get it out of here. And I'll say this, I put all my money that I got on a bet that he wasn't in Baton Rouge and he wasn't in Gainesville before the next game. Off week or not, the week before the Egg Bowl, I'm not buying it. I know that's instant death if that were true. Now, would his family take a free trip down there with somebody on an airplane? Maybe without his permission, who knows? But
right.
I've heard rumors that some member of his family, it could be a cousin, could be a brother, who knows? But I don't think he's going to dare be seen at any other campus. If he did that, then it would be worth saying, hey, you need to hit the bricks. You need to be our coach or not be our coach, because that's taking it too far.
Yeah, so here are the updated college football rankings. We'll rip through them. We got the top 12. So Ohio State, Indiana, no surprise. A&M stays at 3.
Yep.
Georgia cracks the top 4 after their performance. Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Oregon at 7, Oklahoma back in the top 10 with a dominating performance at 8, ahead of Notre Dame at 9, Bama at 10, BYU and Utah, the Holy War at 11 and 12, and odd man out. Miami at 13 with Vanderbilt at 14, Coach. So again, so now I'm just curious, because you know how these upsets occur, right? Last week, Miami's in the top 12. Hey, we got a shot. They go out and take care of business against NC State. Now, all of a sudden, they're back to 13. Does that affect the psyche now? Oh, we got no shot?
I know. That'd make me want to win even more. Want me to win even bigger. Man, y'all want to get back up there? Let's go do it. Let's go win these games as big as we can win them, and see if we can slide into that position. But they may have gotten themselves too far down. They may have done their damage to themselves to lose those 2 games they lost. And they got nobody to blame but themselves, because they were better than those teams. And there's nobody to blame but themselves on those games. But I think the key, if I'm the team and I'm the coaches, we're talking about blowing people out as much as we can. If we have the ability to do it, we're going to go blow people out as much as we can.
It is interesting, Coach. Georgia Tech back at 16.
Yeah.
And Miami basically with one more loss, three positions higher at 13. They don't have Pittsburgh anywhere in the mix. They don't have, obviously, Virginia at 19, at 9 and 2 overall. that's really not given a lot of love outside the University of Miami for the ACC.
Well,
I mean, the committee is basically telling you they're hoping Georgia Tech loses to Pittsburgh, and they're hoping somehow, some way, the Hurricanes could sneak in there, because that's exactly what they're telling you, not giving any love for the Yellow Jackets or Cavaliers.
Well, I mean, they're going to let the conference champion come in, but they want to pick the most talented teams at the end of the seasons, the most dominant teams, the teams that have played the best people and still played well, and that's what they're supposed to have a formula for. If you're not playing a very good schedule and you've only got one loss, it's not going to help you at all. And so I don't know. I think there's a general thinking, or a thinking by a large group of people, that we want the very best teams playing, and we don't want you to have an easier schedule. And to get there, that's kind of why you've got 4 or 5 teams in the SEC right now lined up to play in the Final 12 because of the strength of schedule. And
right.
So, and ACC has nobody to blame but their own. The ACC, I mean, you've got Florida State, Clemson, and Miami. To be honest with you, historically, they ought to be top. They ought to be as good as anybody in any conference where they historically have been, where their facilities are, and the history of their programs, and they're not. Florida State and Clemson have dropped out. Miami is getting closer, but not there yet. And so, put Jimmy Johnson back in there and put Bobby Bowden and Jimmy Johnson, and maybe, there were some days where this would not be the same. It's up to the ACC, I think, to get their act together and start putting together those type of football teams.
We'll be back on Thursday breaking down all the top 25 battles. We'll give you our picks for week number 13 for Coach Bowden. I'm Joe Lisi. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you later in the week.
So long.